No! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here with YoVideogames with another retrospective review. With the Xenoblade Definitive Edition review, as well as Future Connected done, it is time to move on to the most widely talked about Xenoblade game to this day. And that, of course, is Xenoblade 2. So let me get this out of the way first and foremost. A good chunk of the character designs suck, especially the main character. Yes, there is a gacha-like mechanic in the game, however, it is not required in any way, shape, or form to participate in it, and has nothing to do with the main story or its progression. You can ignore it the entire time, start to finish, and not miss a single main story cutscene. With that out of the way, let's talk about the actual game itself. Xenoblade 2 is not a direct sequel to the first game, and no prior knowledge of the first game is needed at any point. However, I can't say it's completely unrelated either. So, for those who did play all the way through Part 1, they do have something to look forward to in this game. That being said, the main plot and characters are completely unique to this title, and you can basically treat it like the difference between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X. One of the changes you might immediately notice is that the horizontal bar for specials is gone, and everything is now hotkeyed to the face buttons and later the D-pad and the triggers. It's wonderful to not have to scroll through them any longer. Also, specials are no longer cooldown based, but instead build meter like a fighting game with every hit of an auto attack. While positioning can be important for some specials, it's far less emphasized in this game from the previous. You will be spending a lot less time circling around enemies in this game. One of the biggest problems with Xenoblade 2 is that the battle system is not explained very well, and they only explain it once, with no way to look up the information like in future games released after this one. I highly recommend watching some other videos on YouTube that break down the battle system to really wrap your head around the changes, because once you do understand the battle system of Part 2, you will likely come to love it the most, like I and many others have. To simplify it as best I can, Xenoblade 2 is like stacking a tower of Jenga blocks, so that once you've built it up, you can then initiate a chain attack to knock it all down and do big damage. Once you have enough characters in the party, you basically try to do combination special attacks that end with an elemental orb hovering around the enemy. You get as many different types of these elemental orbs around them as you can, so end a combo with a fire, a water, a wind attack, etc. Then you press start to initiate a chain attack and break the orbs with the opposing elemental specials, like fire against water. Breaking the orbs in a chain attack nets you big ass damage on the enemy, so big battles are basically spent doing combos on the enemies to stack elemental orbs on top of them and then burst those orbs to blow them the fuck up. Trust me, I know it's confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's super addicting. And with the blade system of this game, blades being buddies that fight alongside you, and every character has not only unique weapons, but also their own element, and each character can have 3 blade buddies, meaning that you can have any combination of 9 characters and elements in your party, making for an insane variety of fighter loadouts. The combat system has so much more to offer that as well. In the first game, there was a break, topple, daze mechanic that was hard to use due to the AI constantly burning through their moves. Here, the AI is noticeably smarter, and now you break, topple, launch, and smash. Launching makes the enemy spin in the air like 1,000 miles per hour, is unable to fight back, and a smash attack to finish it off not only really damages them, but it also knocks rare item drops out of them, meaning you can use it to farm enemies multiple times before killing them. I hope what I'm saying is making any amount of sense, because I really mean it when I say the battle system is deep, customizable, and extremely fun once you fully understand all the different things you can do in it and how it works. It's well worth taking a little time to figure it out. While the first Xenoblade game took place on 2 titans, one explicitly based on nature and one of all mechanical, Xenoblade 2 splits that up quite a bit by having multiple different titans that each represent a unique biome each. The Titans, of course, are smaller because of this, but it also acts as a kind of neat way to section off the loading of the zones. It's not like they live in quarantined off areas of the world either. Throughout the course of the game, the Titans will be near each other for story reasons, and that will be reflected in real time with you walking around on top of them. It's pretty neat stuff. Also, unlike the first game where the bottom of the Titans was a big ocean, the Titans in this game float right on top of a cloud sea. That uses voxels of all things to render out. The cool thing here is that you can actually swim on and around the clouds, making the game feel far less of a floating island type world design because of it. You've got your typical biomes of grass and woodlands, as well as rocky deserts and wastelands, but you also have some really fascinating land masses to explore in Xenoblade 2, such as a glowing lake and forest inside the belly of a giant whale, or a series of islands made of giant jellyfish floating around like an otherworldly archipelago. And that's not even getting into some of the real mindfuckery that comes later on. All of this is accompanied by one of the game's greatest strengths, and that is its soundtrack. It has one of the greatest soundtracks in gaming history. Replacing Yoko Shimomura for lead composer this time is handled by the legend himself, Yasunori Mitsuda. Ace, Kenji Hiramatsu, and Manami Kyoto are also back from Part 1, only this time the entire soundtrack is completely orchestrated with real instruments, chiptune stuff aside, of course. The soundtrack is lush and beautiful as you would expect, but also incredibly varied, from jazz to electronica to chiptune to hard rock and gospel and Celtic, on top of all the classical sweeping orchestrations. Soundtracks simply do not get more incredibly varied on top of being this high quality anywhere else. Mitsuda composes possibly his magnum opus with his track The Tomorrow With You in this game here. In a year where both Nier Automata and Persona 5 released, Xenoblade 2 easily outclasses both of them with its sheer volume and quality, and I say that as a man who deeply loves the Automata soundtrack. While the first Xenoblade game has a very lovable and memorable cast of characters, it's hard to deny how mostly useless much of them are to the overall narrative. Ryan, Charla, Dunban, and Ricky are really just characters along for the ride, and Melia and Fiora have some plot relevance that either gets dropped or really was only there to move the plot forward for Shulk and his Monado. This is something that 2 actually does a very good job of rectifying. It's hard to say any cast of Xenoblade game is bad. In fact, it's probably one of the greatest strengths of the whole series, and it really shows how far Takahashi and his writing staff have come from the original Xenogears. The franchise was always an ensemble cast, but it's really not until Xenoblade 2 that it feels like the ensemble are all equally important to both plot and having satisfying character arcs and conclusions. Except maybe Tora, but fuck him, it's mostly about Poppy anyways, and her struggling to find her place in the world as an artificially created being unlike everyone else. Most people write off Rex as a typical shonen protagonist while failing to realize his character arc is actually the inverse of the trope, and that he needs to learn to let other people make their own decisions, that he can't save everyone, that even if his heart is in the right place, that trying to be the hero all the time can actually lead to selfish outcomes. Pyra and Mithra are incredibly complex characters whose actual sole motivation is incredibly morbid despite being dressed like Candyland hookers. In fact, one of the most interesting things about Xenoblade 2 is that the theme of the game is death, despite being the most bright and colorful entry in the series. This is contrasted beautifully in 3, whose theme is life, despite that being unquestionably the darkest setting in the series. The rest of the cast is also amazing and has great moments and arcs as well, such as Mia's growth from hiding who she is from the world, to Morag's finding the humanity in people as well as discovering the importance of family and people over country and political duty, and Zeke's learning to stop running from your responsibility and stand up for what's morally right, even if that ends up being your own family. A nice contrast to Morag in a way. As great as all this is for the main cast, it's the villains that absolutely kill it here. Not only does Xenoblade 2 have the best villains in the entire franchise, going all the way back to Gears, but also some of the best villains in gaming, period. While a couple of their goons are one-note assholes, the main 3, well 4 really, are incredibly well thought out. What I particularly love most of all is how the game shows how humanity itself creates its own monsters, how we are all products of our own experiences and upbringings, and how both the events we encounter and choices we make because of that shape the world around us, and how all of us are the hero of our own story, even if that story is a revenge tale. I fucking love the characters and story told here. And if the ass-tastic character designs on some of the mains make you physically incapable of playing the game, then really, I just feel sorry for you. All that being said, the game is far from perfect. And if I were to look at this game critically, then yeah, this is the least polished game in the Blade franchise. And when I say polished, I don't mean stability or glitches. The game runs perfectly fine and has incredibly fast loading times for what it's doing. However, the user interface is a mess. The way skills require loading into each individual skill tree for them to take effect is awful. And the worst thing of all is the field's skills. Things in the overworld which require a random number of characters in your party to be equipped and leveled up to actually work. It's very cumbersome and annoying and serves little purpose other than to lock out areas of the world map until you've popped a bunch of core crystals for more blade buddies or grinded them with a lot to level them up to a specific skill. This becomes less and less of a problem the further you get into the game and naturally level up your party and just start opening core crystals, but the fact that the buddies have to be equipped in the party to work is just plain dumb. No sugarcoating this shit. So then what do I possibly do with a score or even a recommendation? Is it an 8.5 or an 8? Critically, maybe it is, but for me, personally, that's a different story. I have played this title for over 500 hours. I could play through it all over again from the start. The overworld, the battle system, the characters, the story, and the music, my god, the music, have made this game never get old. There's just something unique about this game that makes me never tire of playing it, talking about it, or sharing it with others. I give this game a fuck you, it's a 10. Every real problem this game has is completely drowned out by the positives. The lows might dip lower than other Xenoblades here, but the peaks are higher than most of gaming as a whole for me. I have played this game more than any RPG in my life, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Xenoblade 2 is a fuck you, it's a 10, and I recommend the shit out of it. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the channel. Later, dudes.